Hello everybody, this is Trig, welcoming you back to Operation Hats. This is my, hopefully yearly, strategy overview, where I'd like to talk a little bit about how I see this game going, and how I'd like to direct it. This is, of course, completely confidential to people who are not my opponents, so if you are currently one of my opponents and you have watched this far, please stop watching. But if you aren't playing this game, or you are Jinx, keep watching on. Not that there's probably that many of you at the moment. So, it is currently the middle of 1937. We're about to see the Germans' turn. The KMT have just gone, which is why I waited to put this out until I see what they did. Unfortunately, for my upcoming plans, they have decided to build some militia on the coast, which is mildly annoying. But as you may have guessed, my plan at the moment is a J3, July 1937, attack on China. It's the only reason I haven't upgraded my factory in Kyushu earlier, because not doing so allowed me to get a lot of Marines out. Got 4 and plenty of infantry, and so I've got attack options here. In general, my strategy with China is hit them hard, hit them fast, and stop them from getting big. To that end, my goal is to target Kwangtung immediately, with a goal of taking Yunnan as quickly as possible. Once you've secured these two territories, China is effectively neutered, as they can no longer receive Lend-Lease, and they no longer get the Burma Road bonus, and they've lost most of their other income-producing territories if you seize the coast. In addition, they provide just general all-around good base to keep your later conquests in Southeast Asia secure, and Kwangtung is worth 4 IPP, sorry, not 4 IPP, 3 IPP to the Japanese, so all in all, it's a great investment. For example of what happens when this doesn't happen, Silk, normally a very good Japanese player, did not manage to take Kwangtung Yunnan in Operation Snake Eyes when he was facing MP7, which doesn't leave me with a lot of encouragement here. And MP7 built up in Yunnan and Kwangtung, even against CCP and Japanese cooperation, and managed to take back much of China. Japan never fully secured China, and I believe lost that game. I haven't finished studying it, so I'm not quite sure. But I don't want that to happen to me. I believe China is the source of Japan's economic wealth, even into the later game. Once you count up all the bonuses, it is worth more than the Dutch East Indies. It is just extremely valuable. In addition, there's a victory city here in Nanking that you can score and take away from the Allies. It stops both Chinese factions from getting a lot of their victory points, and Manchuria is worth a victory point to you and the Soviets. So there's a lot of value in China here. So it is my first priority, and I think it should be every Japanese player's first priority. So, for that note, my goal is to attack China this turn. I want to take Kwangtung, because if you don't take Kwangtung, what MP7 is going to do is he's going to take, oh, that's a roundel, is he's going to take this massive stack of units, and bring them south here to Kwangtung, and you're never taking that by amphibious assault. Yes, sometimes it's good to lure the Chinese to the coast, especially if you're in Hunan or these other coastal plain areas, because you can hit them with all these bombards and with your air power, but not in Kwangtung, because Kwangtung is mountainous, and it is easy to consolidate his entire force here because it shields Yunnan. You can't approach Yunnan in V4 without getting too close to Kwangtung, unless you plan to go all around through Sikkim. Previously in V3, if you want to hit Yunnan, you could go through Suiyan, Singhai, and straight down into Yunnan in 3 turns. That's a very common attack. Or you could go from this northern warlord here in like Hebei or Shantung, Sichuan, and into Yunnan. And Sichuan was the big Chinese stacked territory to project power. Now, Kwangtung is an equally valid option if you can get it early as China, because it defends the approach to Yunnan and controls an option for attack on Hunan. And it leaves the CCP a bit more freedom to operate up here because they can take Sichuan and use that for their recruitment role, which appears to be what the Chinese factions are thinking here. So that's not great. We don't quite know what the CCP is going to get with their roles up here. We might be facing another CCP infantry, we might be facing a whole lot of CCP infantry, especially once we align all the warlords. Like, for instance, if they get Singhai, there's a possibility that all of these warlords will flip CCP, which is not great. In general, even though KMT is a stronger faction and adding more warlords to them gives them an even greater strength advantage, the fact that they have attack weakness and no recruitment role makes them better to get territories all in all. In general, I personally would probably favor something like a 60-40 KMT-CCP split, because we want to keep KMT from becoming an absolute beast just in pure numbers of units, but we also don't really want CCP to get much anyway because they're just so much more effective with the units they have than KMT is. So split China, edging slightly towards CCP is what we want. We don't want a big, edging slightly towards KMT is what we want. We don't want a big CCP. We don't want a big KMT either. That's the way that works. In terms of what we're attacking, getting back to that, I'd like to take out these 3 northern territories immediately. If I can take Hebei and Suiyang, it makes Beiping so much easier to take because it's a surrounded city, and it's Japan, you never have any trouble blocking these ports. And so to that end, most of these land forces here will be committed to attacking here with a small naval invasion into Hebei, probably 2 infantry or an infantry marine and fighter, because that way I can guarantee that even if this militia does get some lucky hits, we'll still have Beiping surrounded, because otherwise we have some issues there. In addition, what we can do is we can take this artillery and motorize and use them to attack Beiping, which then gives us opportunities for sleeping out, going 2 moves into Sichuan or Shantung or Shenxi the next turn with those, increasing our attack value, as opposed to attacking with just infantry. In addition, I'd like to claim as many of these 3 coastal territories as possible. Previously, in my planning, I'd been expecting to see a militia here in Hunan, well, actually an infantry here in Hunan, and a militia in Nanking and a cavalry belt. We don't have more cavalry, which is interesting here. I was expecting MP7 to have a few more, which is good, because I don't like him. They're KMT's strongest counterattack force. And he's already going to get more from the warlords, probably 1 from Shanghai, 1 from Tibet, depending on how those rolls go. But he's got militia. And the thing I hate more than anything in Japan is militia on the coast, because what it does is it forces you to fight for it. You can't just do a drop-in, walk-on, and take the territory. If you left all these empty, I could drop 3 infantry here, collected a sum total of about $9, and had no worries about it. However, these militia mean I either need to commit at least 2 units per militia to have a decent chance, or, more accurately, a fighter and an infantry. And the problem is, I'm attacking Kwangtung and heavy north, which means I need a lot of planes. Because if you come down here and look at Kwangtung, first of all, there's 6 units in the territory. Second of all, it's mountainous. Third of all, it's an amphibious assault, so we've got to deal with that. But, besides just trying to take the territory, which we could achieve not too bad with, maybe 3 transports and a plane or 2, the issue is we have to hold the territory, and then we want to be able to project threat from it. KMT has 9 infantry and 2 cavalry right here. They're going to get 2 more from Yunnan. That is 13 units that can come attack Kwangtung, and we need to be able to defend that. I will be able to bring any bombards, so from the 2nd Fleet I can bring 7 ships into port here and have 7 Ghost Militia, which is not bad. But the issue is if those Ghost Militia don't work, then I've lost my entire fleet and my game is over. So we don't want that to happen. That's kind of my worst nightmare at the moment. So we're going to come in here in Kwangtung with a lot of force, because if we come in here with a lot of force and dissuade a counterattack, it means that we have the option to do some threatening and possibly even attack Yunnan on the 2nd turn of the attack. Because the sooner we can take Yunnan, the sooner this Lend-Lease route through French Indochina dies, and the less AA guns, the less fighters, the less bizarre other weird things the Allies could send messing with me. For instance, back in Operation Snake Eyes, the Allies Lend-Leased the KMT seaplane, which managed to do a bunch of convoy raiding and Japanese transport sinking before it finally got destroyed. And so I don't want that to happen. And to that end, I'm also going to be more diligent than Silk was there and not leave my convoy lines open. So moving on, we need to hit Kwangtung hard, and so to do that, we're going to bring probably 4 transports, about 8 or 9 units in here to hit it in Hainan, because with that allows us to bring all our bombards in and get a bunch of first strikes off and chew through there without taking too many casualties. Because the issue is not chewing through there, it's chewing through there and keeping units afterwards. That's also going to be the issue up here, because that leaves us with less planes to come in here and take Suiyang and Beiping and the others. Because if we have to commit 1 plane to Hebei, 1 plane to Beiping, just to keep those 2 battles rolling evenly, that's 2 planes. That leaves us with 5 more. That's 1 here, 1 here. That's 3 to divvy up. We could say 2 and 3, but then, which is what I would like, because Suiyang is paying to take, do the mountain, just, again, lots of units. so you lose a lot of units in return and leaves you open for counterattacks. But that means no conquests on the coast here at all. And that's not great, because this is money that we would like to have. If we don't take it this turn, we've got to backtrack and take it again next turn, when those units could be better served coming in, reinforcing Qingtung, and attacking Yunnan. Because my buy this turn is probably only going to be about 3 infantry. I think it's 3 infantry militia upgrade, and this factory upgrade, because I need to get this factory going, because as you've seen, my tech rolls have been horrible. I need more tech dice. But so it means I'm not going to have a great follow-up force coming through here, unlike if I attack a few turns later. Or if I attacked a turn earlier, in which case I would have had a very strong follow-up force, but not as strong an initial force. Which is why I didn't attack this last turn, even though I've been thinking about it, because I didn't think I could take Qingtung and hold it. But I can this turn, so we're going to do it. I can drop 1 infantry into Hunan, which is nice. But what that does mean is that I need to have transport here that's really doing nothing else. So that's not great. I'd much prefer to have Shengtung be open and then we'll shoot down here in Hunan, because I can take a transport in here, drop 1 infantry here, 1 infantry here, and then drop a marine with a destroyer in here, and I've got those 2 territories wrapped up. But what I might need to do here is bring a transport over and drop an infantry in each of these and try for the Nanking attack. But if I attack Nanking, which I'd like to because it gets rid of this port, that means that I don't have either a bombard in the south, which I'd like to keep, or a fighter up here. And I really do need planes up here. I've looked at the possibility of taking Beiping with only ground units, but the problem is it leaves me weaker, either again in Qingtung, where I'd like to devote as many forces as I can, or in Suiyang. And so that's the issue here. I need to attack these 3 territories in Qingtung, and I'd like to pick up these. But we don't want to risk overextension. We want to be able to keep going the next turn, not just retaking forces. Because MP7 is crafty, and he is willing to counterattack if he sees it. So we need to be careful not to give him 2 good opportunities. So let me know in the comments if you've got any thoughts on how best to handle the China attack. I've run out a few more scenarios. Before I do my turn here, I'll ask Jinx a few times, see if he's got any suggestions. But ultimately, I think I might have to settle for a slightly less aggressive attack than perhaps I might have liked, or maybe just a low odds attack on Nanking to see if I can do okay. But you know, it's militia in a city. It's 1 at 3. That's not great. Of course, I could be crazy and attack all 3 of these at once. 1 infantry, 1 infantry, 1 infantry. But that's playing with fate a little. Don't quite like that. All right. Moving on to other things. Currently, the Pacific is looking pretty nice here. The FEC fleet is way over the men. That's what I'd like to see, because as Japan, my second target after China is always going to be Calcutta. Calcutta is quick to take. It's relatively easy to overrun with your surprise attack if you do it right. It stops the FEC from being a pain interfering with your Southeast Asia objective, which is a pretty important one for you to grab. Because if you don't manage to take out Calcutta, they're going to fight you for Burma the whole time. It stops the Allies from getting a point from Calcutta, and effectively knocks out one of the production areas over here, because FEC is rarely ever going to build another factory, and so they're relegated to a lot of colonials and infantry and militia, and it's pretty easy to mock with the rest of India. In addition, there's really not another good target for your surprise strike. The Dutch, don't warn it, they're too weak. Anzac, not bad, but the problem is, now in V4, you have to take 3 territories for Anzac to capitulate, which is up from 2 in V3, and even then it's always hard to get them to do it in a turn. Because you can come down here, take out Sydney, take out New Zealand, cap Anzac, and they're gone for the game, which is great. And it's the same thing as Calcutta. It gets you a city. That's a 1 point U, -1 to the Allies. But the problem is, Anzac's a lot closer to the US. Calcutta is much harder for the Allies to retake after you've done it. Whereas Anzac, if you lose naval superiority and have to go scampering back up to the Philippines or something, not too hard for the US to come down and retake, especially since you can't stack militia in it anymore. As Japan in V3, my favorite strategy was taking out places early, like the Dutch, and then just stacking them full of militia 1 a turn until you have like a stack of 7 or 8 militia on each of these important islands down here. And unfortunately, that's no longer a thing in V4, because it was hilarious to see the Americans try to attack it. But those days are gone, so it means these islands are a bit hard to defend. I need to focus a bit more on the fleet. And I will be focusing to try and get the Kita Butai objective, because it's very powerful, and if you get it, it makes it far easier to go ahead and maintain it. Once the first person take it, often wins it. and so we don't want to let the U.S. get away with that. Fortunately, our last objective, I don't remember what it's called, Pacific Security Island Chain or something like that, to take Midway, Guam, Wake, Attu, those islands, is almost completely impossible to make because Midway is just way too close to the US. It's one turn away from the West Coast. It's super hard to maintain unless you completely get rid of the American fleet. I don't think in all the YouTube boards I've looked at, I've seen a single person score it successfully. Um, really, I think the only way to do it is to take Hawaii, and so give the Americans a bigger target to come after. But even then, if the Americans want to, they will stop you from getting that objective. So it's not really something I think I can get unless it just happens to fall that way late game. So it's not really going to be a big try for me. So because I also don't want to go up here into Alaska and deviate that far. I want to focus hard south here and let the Americans come to me. So my game plan at the moment is looking beat down China. I'd like to have that done around the same time Germany's going to war, because then depending on what the American income looks like, I can either go on an early strike on the Dutch, which is going to allow Jinx to get his Atlantic Wall building earlier, and then hit Calcutta, or we can maybe hit an early strike on Calcutta. Calcutta's empty, and we're willing to risk the Americans coming in early. Or if the American income is looking a bit too high, you can go ahead and strike Calcutta, and then swing back and pick up the Dutch on the way back. That's what we're looking at here. We're hoping the F-16 fleet doesn't come through, because if they do, we need to kill them before we can kill Calcutta. Or we could go Calcutta, but then we've got a fleet hanging around after us, which we've got to beat up. I much prefer they go over here and beat up Italy, because, yeah, beat up Italy. But, yes, it's Italy, and I'd like Italy to be doing well, because there's been some talks about, taking the Suez and so. And that's always very nice for Japan to see a strong Italy going, but I'd rather the fleet be there than here. Because ultimately, if there's no fleet in the Indian Ocean, I can turn my entire fleet to the US and operate with much more impunity in the Southeast Pacific. The Southwest, Southeast is over there. Never mind. Otherwise, around the board, games seem to be going pretty good for the Axis so far. We've taken Abyssinia, and Spanish Civil War looks to be going our way. It's approximately even in terms of forces at the moment, but nationalists are on a strong stance because they've captured Madrid. The Republicans decided to cede it very early on, and I think that was a mistake. It's a very strong defensive point and really controls the pace of the game here in Spain, because whoever controls it is able to project very effective dead zones around them and force their opponents to keep trading through. So now that the Nationalists hold it, they can bottle the Republicans up into Catalonia. If the Republicans still held it, they could have bottled the Nationalists up into Leon. And so with that double Lend-Lease coming in from the Germans and Italians, and the greater territory count and the strategic position, I think this is a Nationalist win. They just got to be methodical about it and hope the dice don't go too bad. Abyssinia, Italians took it. They took some losses doing so, but ultimately that is very worth it to stop that from being a sink to the Allied income and just draining them for long term. Now they can focus on attacking Cairo, building up for war, making sure Rome is secure and all that. So that's hopefully going to go pretty well. I've got good hopes for Europe. Over here, Siam, we got one out of 5, I believe, rolls. That's lucky. We'll see if we get any more. But I can't wait to go and get Siam and start working down here. Unfortunately, I did realize in V4 there is no port in Siam, which means I can't even build a factory there until I build at least a minor port, which is annoying to say the least, because it really limits my options here. It does mean that I can consider if I want to build a port over here in I-12, which is what I've been thinking about, because it's a pretty good striking opportunity if I want to really target the Indian Ocean. The other option is, of course, the traditional Palau, to give me options on Hawaii and Australia again. But, of course, there is this coastal gun here in Malaya, which can cause all sorts of issues for you with this narrow crossing if Britain decides to jump the gun on you. So, we'll see. I've got some ideas on how to deal with that we can maybe talk about later. But the big thing is, for the moment, I need to deal with China. I need to deal with China quick and hard. We don't want China to grow, snowball, get a ton of allies on lease, and be strong. Another thing I'd like to focus on is, thinking back over a few games, if I ever let the CCP get a port, or be careful and get a railway, and the Soviets can start Lend-Leasing them. And then that opens the Americans up to Lend-Lease to the KMT, which is mutually advantageous for both the Allies and the Comintern, not something I want to be seeing as the Japanese. So we need to be paying attention to that. I'm thinking, not this turn, but the next turn, after my factory's upgraded, I'm going to build a medium bomber, because if I haven't managed to secure Yunnan by then, I can bomb this railway going into French Indochina, and I can bomb any railways the CCP build up, which is going to slow down that Lend-Lease and at least force them to pay some money to keep that Lend-Lease coming in. So we'll see if that's effective. Yeah, we got a few tricks coming up. Airborne, hopefully, could be nice. We'll see how effective they are. And yeah, Soviets so far have been very nice. They've stayed off the border. I don't particularly like this infantry coming over, but everybody else is cleaned out of here. I need to get this militia upgraded somewhat quickly, unless they border clash him this turn, in which case he's no longer doing anything. And I'm pretty confident I can defend against that Soviet point here. Because I'm just gonna, if I can take China, it leaves my now quite large army free to do other things, such as Calcutta or Manchuria defense, and so that's, again, why I've got to focus China down quick and early. So I think that's about all. I've been rambling for several minutes at this point, and so I'll let you all go. Leave any thoughts down in the comments on ideas, tips, mistakes you've made that you don't want me to repeat. Yeah, and I will say I've had a great time so far with this game. It may be my first game of V4, but I'm loving it, and some things I'm really liking the changes, some things not quite so much, but it's been a great game so far. I've really enjoyed the people I'm playing with, and Jinx is a wonderful teammate. I cannot recommend him enough as a collaborator. And I can't wait to see how this goes. There's some really good players at this table. I anticipate a really engaging and quite interesting game coming up. So thank you everybody for watching this, and goodbye. I'll see you on the Jack.